Hello, this is Dr. Branch, and I want to talk to you for just a few minutes about some key biblical texts regarding homosexuality. I'm not going to spend tons of time on each one of them, but we are going to talk about a few. I just want to point out to you that most people, when they criticize Christians for trying to give an articulate biblical defense of the traditional view of homosexuality, you're going to get called Fred Phelps. Fred Phelps is a jerk. He's an evil so-called minister over in Topeka. Claims to be a Baptist, but he's just an evil, self-centered cult leader is what he is. But they're going to call you Fred Phelps. For the record, Fred Phelps has protested here at Midwestern on 2 different occasions since I've been here. But usually what's going to happen is called the Fred Phelps argument. All evangelicals will get lumped in with Fred Phelps. This happened to me several times in the military. Some of my soldiers would say, bring up Fred Phelps, and I'd say, hey, look, I'm not Fred Phelps. Do you think I am? Well, no, I really don't think you are. But they're going to bring it up anyway. It's an ad hominem. Sean Penn played Harvey Milk in the movie Milk, won an Oscar. And he said this: I think it's a good time for those who voted for the ban against gay marriage to sit and reflect and anticipate their great shame and the shame of their grandchildren's eyes if they continue that way of support. We've got to have equal rights for everyone. Well, I'm glad Sean Penn's got some moral convictions about something other than communism and visiting Iran. But this is sort of stuff you're going to run into. But what does the Bible say? I'm going to skip past them. This is Market Castro and 17th Street in San Francisco. It's the Castro district where the gay community is located. There's the huge homosexual flag. I just remind you the rainbow is a Christian biblical symbol. Don't let them steal that from you. It's a good thing. Rainbow's a good thing. But, you know, the rainbow-colored flag, they use that for gay rights. And so we are going countercultural, and there will be never any place more countercultural in your ministry than saying what the Bible says. And my goal over the next 10 minutes is just to remind you what the Bible does say. It's very clear. It's not vague on the topic. And remind you to stand firm to what Scripture says. Well, few things. First of all, God created man male and female. Most views of homosexuality that are positive toward or see it in a good way have some sort of flawed view of gender. And the gift of gender is part of the goodness of God's creation. That's a quote directly from the Baptist Faith and Message. And then it said this, that one of the reasons we're given gender is that we might marry and that we might procreate. Well, there's no way, apart from artificial reproductive technologies, that a homosexual couple can procreate. So it's impossible for homosexual relationships to fulfill the creation mandate to procreate. And then finally, heterosexual monogamous marriage is the proper expression of sexuality. We see this very clearly in Genesis 2:24 through 25. This reason a man will leave his father and mother, be united to his wife. Notice wife singular, not plural. Polygamy was never part of God's original plan. Though he tolerated it, he never celebrated it. It's the biblical standards, always monogamy. So sex is designed by God to be shared in marriage between a husband and a wife. Therefore, heterosexual monogamous marriage is the arena for sexual expression. Let me just say a few things about Sodom and Gomorrah. You see some quotes there. The big debate is about this term yada, when these guys are knocking at the door, pounding on Lot's house. And they say, we want to know these men. They thought they're men. They're angels. They'd come in to stay with you. That word yada can mean become acquainted with, to know in the general sense. But it's also used as an euphemism for sexual intercourse at least 10 times in the Old Testament. And the author, and the way we know what it means in Genesis 19:5 is just a couple of verses later. Lot offers his daughters to these men. He said they've never known a man. That's the verb yada. So in context, there's no doubt. When they knock on the door, they're asking for sex with these men. They're in fact demanding it. And that was one of the reasons God judged Sodom and Gomorrah. And in fact, Sodom became a paradigm for sinful behavior throughout the Bible. If you want to say someone's really bad, you compare them to Sodom. You see that throughout the Bible. Leviticus clearly says, you shall not lie with the male as one lies with the female. It is an abomination. Note this passage very carefully, because also in Leviticus 23, there's a man who lies with the male as those who lie with a woman. Both of them have committed a detestable act. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood guiltiness is upon them. Without a doubt, Paul has the ethics, sexual ethics of Leviticus in mind when he's writing 1 Corinthians. That's the main reason why he's upset with this guy that's having sex with his dad's wife. It's incest, and he's basing that on Leviticus. And these passages are in fact the background for the word arsenokoitai that pops up in 1 Corinthians 16:9 and 10. Deuteronomy 22:5 also says cross-dressing is forbidden. There are gender-appropriate behaviors for each culture. And so the idea is that you're not trying to mislead someone. And I always have students ask about, well, what about the Scottish people wearing kilts? Well, in that culture, a kilt is a thoroughly male form of dressing. The intent here, the purpose of this verse, Deuteronomy 22:5, is that there's no intent to deceive. You're not trying to present yourself as one gender when you're actually another. Male homosexual prostitution is condemned in Deuteronomy 23:17 through 18. In verse 17, the word translated harlot means perverted one, and the word translated perverted one is kadesh. In verse 18, this person, a kadesh, is later disparagingly referred to as a dog, thus the NIV's translation of a male prostitute, so it's condemned there. Strong inference that the dog is committing sodomy. Judges 19 through 20, a scene very similar to Genesis 19. This crowd pounds on the door, demands sex with this man. He gives them his concubine instead. They rape her through the night, so I guess technically they're bisexual. But the point is, it's condemned and viewed in a very negative light. Oh yeah, this is something that will be brought up from time to time. Ezekiel 16. Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. Ezekiel's talking to Jerusalem. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. Therefore I did away with them, as you have seen. Some homosexual activists will say, well, see, they condemned Sodom for not helping the poor, as opposed. It's really capitalism that God's against. That's why God judged Sodom and Gomorrah, is because they're capitalist. They'll actually get like that. Well, that's a false dichotomy. It's not that they were judged for their abuse of the poor in exclusion to their sexual sin. No, it's both. They were both exploiting poor people and committing sexual sin. They're condemned for both of them. What I would point out to you is in my own life, my sin has rarely stayed contained. If I get sideways with God in one area, I'm going to get sideways with him in another area. And that's what's going on at Sodom. Not only did they exploit people sexually, they exploited them financially and economically. Romans 1, this is the definitive passage. Paul details humanity's rejection of God and the ensuing consequences of this rejection. And 3 times he has this phrase, God gave them over. God gave them over. God gave them over. It's a very powerful rhetorical device within the text itself. And if you're looking for a way to outline the text, I would encourage you to outline it along those God gave them over phrases. He uses the word impurity in verse 24. It has clear sexual emphasis. And, in fact, one form of impurity are homosexual acts. And this is the only specific mention of lesbian behavior in the Bible that's found in Romans chapter 1. And notice also this natural versus unnatural use. There's strong echoes of Genesis language here. And Paul says males and females have a natural use for sexual use for each other, and this use is distorted by homosexual acts. And Paul does not use the normal Greek words for male and female. He uses words for male and female from the Septuagint of Genesis 1:27. He clearly has Genesis 1:26 through 28 in his mind when he says this. It's a creation argument. And you understand this. If you look at the genitals of the normal male and female, they naturally fit a male with a female and a female with male. Males and males don't fit. Females and females don't fit. And that's the point Paul is making. It's also a form of idolatry, and in fact, sexual immorality does become an idolatry. It's what someone worships. Their entire life is spent around that. 1 Corinthians 6 uses 2 very specific words. It has 10 vices. 2 of them specifically reference homosexuality. The word that the NIV translates male prostitutes as malakoi, and the word homosexual offenders is arsenokoitai. You're going to need to know both of these for the exam. You see them. I expect you to know them on the final exam. And oh my goodness, the different way these words have been translated. You see them here, and it goes on and on. Probably my favorite is the net translation, which translates malakoi as passive homosexual partners, and arsenokoitai, as practicing homosexuals. This word malakoi literally means soft, and arsenokoitai comes from two words that mean male and sex. And here's what I'm going to say. Malakoi up here is referring to the one who plays the passive part in male homosexual intercourse, and arsenokoitai refers to the one who plays the insertive or aggressive part in male homosexual intercourse. If someone ever tells you the Bible doesn't talk about homosexuality, let me tell you, I don't know what more the Apostle Paul would have to do right here than draw you a picture. And so all these things, effeminate is trying to get on this idea that it's soft, but it means more than just effeminate. It's really referring to someone playing the passive or receptive part in male homosexual intercourse. So again, I like the net translation best. I don't like the phrase male prostitutes. It's more, there's a certain hermeneutical debate that goes on in that translation. Don't like effeminate. It's too broad. No, it's referring to the passive homosexual partner. The Debt Bible has it exactly right. It's not that effeminate is wrong. It's just not as good as it should be as far as the translation. By the way, the first time the word arsenokoitai occurs in any literature in antiquity is in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. And here's where it comes from. If you'll look, Paul is, I think he creates the word from, you see the word arsenos, that's arsenokoitai, arsenos, that's the word male, and then koite, that's a word for sex, for bed, or bed for sex. He's creating the word arsen. See it? They're two right beside each other. You see them right there in the Septuagint? That's where Paul gets the word arsenokoitai. It goes back to Levitical thought. This is devastating to those who want to say, well, Levitical sexual ethics have nothing to do with our ethics today. Oh, yeah, they do. At least Paul thought they did. So I would also point out to you, homosexuality can be forgiven in the same way God forgives thieves, greedy, or drunkards. The word arsenokoitai is also used in 1 Timothy 1. Jude verses 4 through 7 says Sodom and Gomorrah were judged for sexual perversion. You see some of my comments on AIDS there, but here's my conclusion. The Bible teaches that the proper mode for sexual expression is monogamous and heterosexual marriage. Any deviation from this standard is sin. Homosexual acts, both in male and female expressions, are specifically condemned in the Old and New Testaments, and homosexual behavior is inconsistent with the Christian ethic.